So sorry.
It actually feels good. Doesn't smell fishy.
Okay, awesome. I think because we're over. Everyone just take a seat anywhere except in the jury box. And Brenna, if you see the interpreter not hearing me, just ask if no.
I'll write you something.
Okay, yes, I'll see. I'll be like, what does that mean? All right, everyone, please be seated. All right, everyone, I want to thank you so much for your service. It is greatly appreciated. As I said before, we can't have jury trials without having jurors. You will be receiving a payment for your service. You can do one or two things. You can donate it, and you can pick whatever charity that you wish to donate to. They have a lot of charities that are listed down there. Or you can wait. You'll receive a check in the mail. It'll probably be maybe 2 or 3 months later. And you're going to wonder, is this a scam? Why do I have this? And then you're going to remember the great time you had in the 187 District Court with Judge Boyd. And you're going to say, that's why I have this. You will need to go downstairs if you want to have your parking validated. So that's right in the basement. Deputy Laura has the excuses for you. So you can either have the rest of this day free, or you can go back downstairs and say, please put me on another panel. Wait a minute, let it marinate. Don't immediately say no. But I always ask people that. So if you would like to do that, you're more than welcome to do that. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to call the names of the persons who are going to be on this jury. Elicio Morales, if you'll please take a seat in the jury box. Vicky Wheelis. Gary Stevenson. Rodolfo Castillo. Iris Solis.
Oh, have a seat in the chairs. Have a seat in the chairs.
Can we go back there? All right, Iris Solis. Somebody didn't have their jury buddy. Iris Solis. Deputy, can you have them call Iris Solis from downstairs?
She's here.
Eric Johnston. Iris Solis. And the box. All right, and Eric Johnston, you're already in the box. Thank you. Jason Fish. John Lopez. Gerardo Parra. Amaya Hendricks. I hope I'm pronouncing that first name correctly. Amaya Hendricks, thank you. April Herrera. Anna Stewart. Oh, you chose the perfect seat, so you can just get right there. Michael Kowalik. Fernan Kroger. All right, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you so much for your service. The 187 District Court is always open. So other than serving on juries or maybe being a witness, you're always welcome to come down to any court. I just really discourage people from going to juvenile court because they're underage, or going to Child Protective Services court because there are extremely sensitive matters there. But you're always welcome to stop by. So I hope you have a great rest of your day. Enjoy the Riverwalk. Right now, someone's mentioning Taco Bell. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to give you a few instructions before the state and the defense give their opening statements and some other things take place. I am not in control of the temperature in this courtroom. I know it gets extremely hot. There's a thermostat over in the corner, and jurors sometimes will look at me, will she please lower the thermostat? But that thermostat doesn't work. I think it's a placebo. So it does not work. But you are allowed, if you want to bring drinks in, but just make sure there's a covering on it. Again, if you ever need a break, just do the break symbol for us and we'll be able to break. If I don't see you because I have the computers, then the state or the defense or the deputies will see you and let me know. So what I'm going to do is I need everyone, if you'll please raise your right hand for me, please. Do you and each of you solemnly swear affirm in the case of the state of Texas versus Mr. PARADA, you will a true verdict render according to the law and the evidence, so help you God? All right, you can lower your hand. State?
Yes, sir.
And Mr. PARADA, if you'll please stand.
True bill of indictment. In the name and by authority of the state of Texas, the grand jury of Bexar County, state of Texas, duly organized and paneled and sworn as such term at the July term AD 2021 of the 379th Judicial District Court of said county in said court at said term do present in and to said court that in the county and state aforesaid and interior to the presentment of this indictment. On or about the 21st day of September 2020, Jose PARADA did recklessly cause the death of an individual, namely Michael Cepeda, hereinafter referred to as complainant, by discharging a deadly weapon, namely a firearm, at and in the direction of the complainant, against the peace and dignity of the state, undersigned foreman of the grand jury.
All right, Mr. PARADA, how do you plead? Guilty, not guilty, or no contest?
No.
All right, thank you. State, do you have opening statements?
Yes, Judge.
All right, you may proceed.
Thank you. Alone on the ground outside of Valero on the parking lot floor.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Sanders, if you can make sure you speak up because the interpreter needs to hear.
Yes. Yes.
Hello, saying alone on the ground outside of the parking lot of a Valero in the rain, dying from a gunshot wound to his head. Those were the last moments of Michael Cepeda's life. Those were probably his last memories. That's not justice for Michael Cepeda. That's not justice for anyone. Now, you're going to hear testimony over the course of this trial over the next few days about what happened at the Valero parking lot. You're going to hear testimony that Michael Cepeda, he wasn't an angel. He had some issues, and you're going to hear, and we're going to be upfront that on that day, on the Valero, it was on 6903 West Military Road. He was in a stolen vehicle. He was with his girlfriend, Sabrina Espinosa. That they were in a stolen Highlander. Sabrina was the driver, Michael was the passenger. This happened on September 20th, 21st, 2020. Now, they're at that parking lot when all of a sudden a truck comes up and pulls in front of them. They don't know what's going on, but they see this person just staring at them. That person was a big fraud. He gets out of the vehicle, he's watching them, they're just sort of minding their business. He was watching them, he's on the phone. At some point, Jose Prada pulls out a gun. And he has it down at his side, and he approaches Michael's side of the vehicle. And he tries to demand that they get out. They don't know who he is. There's some guy pulling out a gun on them. So Sabrina, the driver, she backs up. She tries to take off as anyone would. She ends up crashing. She runs into the detector for the gas pump. It ends up getting caught, and they're stuck there. So they take off and they try to escape. They try to run. Jose follows after them. He's focused on Michael. Sabrina's the driver, but he's focused on Michael. You're gonna hear testimony that, like I said, the vehicle was stolen. It belonged to Jose Prada's brother. Sabrina comes back when she sees that Jose isn't letting Michael leave. At one point, Jose Prada grabs onto Michael, and there's surveillance video from that location. It's grainy, so it's not the greatest, but it's going to be clear to you when you watch it that Michael was backing away the entire time. He was trying to get away. He's not assaulting Jose Prada. There's really no evidence that he even knew who Jose Prada was. Just some guy with a gun who won't let him leave. Now, unfortunately, the camera only had an angle. It wasn't able to move. And so they back off the screen. And so the last thing you see is Michael backing away from Jose. And so they hold on to him with a gun up to his head. Next thing you know, everyone comes running back. You're gonna hear from a couple witnesses who were at the scene. You're gonna hear from Johnny Solis, who's an ER nurse. He sees parts of what's going on. He runs out with the gun. He disarms Jose Prada, and Jose Prada stands there until the cops come. They administer CPR. They end up taking Michael to the hospital, but he was essentially dead at the scene. You're gonna hear from the autopsy report from the doctor who did the examination, and you're gonna hear from a few different officers. Now, what's gonna be clear to you throughout this trial is, like I said, that Michael and Sabrina, they weren't in the right state. They shouldn't have been in the stolen vehicle. But you're also gonna hear that Jose Prada wasn't in there. That it wasn't his role to kill a man who had nothing to do with it. That he was in the vehicle, he was a passenger, he wasn't even the driver. So at the end of this trial, after we've proven that Jose Prada recklessly caused the death of Michael Cepeda on that day, that he tried to take justice into his own hands when the police officers were already on the way, we're gonna ask that you hold him accountable for his actions and that you find him guilty. Thank you.
Defense.
Yes, thank you. To get to September 21st of 2020, it's extremely important for us to go back to September the 15th of 2020. Now, on September the 15th of 2020, Michael Cepeda and his girlfriend Sabrina go to Mr. Parada, Jose Parada's brother's home. Now, at his home, they take his vehicle. They take the vehicle from the parking lot in his driveway, his own driveway in his house. Mr. Parada makes the phone call, calls police, reports the vehicle stolen. Several days pass. Now, in between then, Michael Cepeda and his girlfriend Sabrina have tried to get in to Mr. Parada's home again. Because you see, they have the keys to his house. So they go back. Now, on fast forward to September 21st, 2020. Michael Cepeda and his girlfriend Sabrina are driving by again, the same address. Mr. Parada's brother's home. Because they're checking to see if he's there because they're going to go back in there. Mr. Parada walks out of his house. He sees that it's his vehicle. He tells his neighbor to call 911. He contacts his brother and says, hey, I saw the car again, and they're coming back to the house. Mr. Parada, Jose Parada, says, okay, just make sure you call the police. He called the police. They followed, Mr. Cepeda and Sabrina arrived at the Valero gas station. Shortly after they arrive, Mr. Jose Parada pulls in with his truck. Now, Mr. Parada does pull in with his truck, and his vehicle is facing the stolen vehicle, which belongs to him and his brother. He gets out of his vehicle. Now, in the meantime, Michael and Sabrina and in their car, or actually Mr. Parada's vehicle. What are they doing in there? They're smoking, they're getting high in front of the Valero. Mr. Parada looks, he's on the phone. You're gonna see this in the video. He's on the phone, he's talking to his brother. Did you call the police? Hey, is our car, you put a sticker on the back, right? Goes back around, make sure. Yeah, this is the car. He's talking to his brother, and this is the car. This is their car. Sabrina is in the driver's seat, the gas pump. Mr. Cepeda is in the passenger seat. Now, you're going to see video of Mr. Parada go to the window. He's not running at the window. He's knocking on the window. He's asking him to get out of the vehicle. When he's asking him to get out of the vehicle, he doesn't have his gun pointed at Mr. Cepeda. But he does see Mr. Cepeda, again, light that meth pipe. Now, Mr. Cepeda acts like he's going to get out. He gets back into the passenger side. There's some words that are exchanged between both parties. Mr. Parada does, at that point, on his hip, takes out his handgun. Now, he's asking him to get out because Mr. Parada, again, was going to detain them until law enforcement arrived at the scene, because his brother had already called law enforcement and he knew law enforcement was already on the way. And you're going to see evidence that that's exactly how it took place. They called law enforcement and he was going to detain them. Now, once Mr. Cepeda gets out of the vehicle, he gets back in, and when Sabrina, who knows what she was doing in the passenger side, whether she was high or not, she was in the passenger side. Mr. Parada is right here, and they nearly sideswipe him with the vehicle when they reverse it. They nearly hit Mr. Parada, and you're going to see that in the video for yourself. Now, after that happens, a few seconds pass by. Sabrina exits the passenger side. Mr. Parada's here on this side. He's telling Mr. Cepeda to get out of the vehicle so he can detain him there. And you're going to see at that moment, Sabrina comes up from behind, gets behind Mr. Parada, and Mr. Cepeda is again looking, walking back, looking. They're trying to get to the gas pump, the Valero. You're going to see this all in surveillance. Now they're right here. You can't see exactly what takes place in this side. Okay, you can't see it. Next thing you know, there's going to be a view of Mr. Parada standing right here, Mr. Cepeda standing right here, and Mr. Parada is going to have his handgun like this. Okay? You're going to see this on the video. Now, what you're going to also see is Sabrina runs back and gets in between both Mr. Parada and Mr. Cepeda. She's there. Mr. Parada is holding him with his left hand like this. And you're going to see how far it's extended. She's in the middle. She has her hand, again, you're going to see, she's going to have her hand tussling with him. You're gonna hear from her saying that she grabbed the firearm. I suspect they're gonna put her on, and she's gonna tell you, I grabbed that firearm, I was getting it, I was trying it, and so you're gonna see this again taking place. Next thing you know, they're gonna be in front of the camera from Bolero. You're gonna see Mr. Cepeda, the hands are moving, tussle, and at the last clip, you're gonna see Mr. Parada's brother get there. Okay, he gets there and he's right behind. Mr. Parada's right here. Mr. Cepeda's right here. And Sabrina's in between. And at the last moment, you're gonna see something happen outside of the camera. Now, on September 21st, 2020, you're gonna hear evidence and you're gonna see evidence that Mr. Parada had no intention, but did the responsible thing of calling. It's gonna be phone records of what he called, who he called, and was, again, multiple times asked, and he repeated, my intent was to detain the individual. Mr. Cepeda and Sabrina, who, again, you're gonna hear testimony from Sabrina that Michael was uncontrollable. You're gonna hear testimony from, I suspect, from Sabrina, letting you know that he always had a firearm with him. I suspect she's gonna come up here and she's gonna tell you that he was consuming so much drugs that you couldn't control him. I shouldn't have even been with him. She's also gonna tell you that he believed that some drug cartel was after him. She's gonna tell you that during these time periods, they were unstable. They were not in the right state of mind. You're gonna hear testimony from her that she herself was, again, charged for an assault, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. These are not your friendly people. Mr. Parada, ladies and gentlemen, you're gonna see through the evidence that this has been not only his worst nightmare, ladies and gentlemen, he was doing and he continues to do right. He follows the laws. He obeys the laws. He's worked hard to get to this point. And I submit to you that you'll find him not guilty. Thank you.
State, call your first witness.
And Your Honor, before we call our first witness, we would offer State's Exhibit 1.
All right. Any objections?
No objections, Your Honor, as long as it's the surveillance video.
All right, any objections to State's Exhibit number 1?
No objections, Your
All
Honor.
right, State's Exhibit number 1 is admitted into evidence.
And Judge, the state would call Johnny Solis to the stand.
And Judge, at this time, we'd ask to invoke the rule.
All right, the rule will be invoked. All right, I see you may not be able to raise your right hand. Yes. All right. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, you can have a seat. And if you could state your name for the record, please.
Johnny Solis Jr.
All right, and just make sure you keep your voice up so that the court reporter can hear, the jurors can hear. And
Okay.
I'm going to need to be a little extra loud because we have other people that need to hear as well, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, state.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Solis, can you just briefly introduce yourself to the jury by your name?
My name is Johnny Solis Jr.
Mr. Solis, do you reside here in San Antonio?
Yes, I do.
And can you tell the jury what you do for a living?
I'm a ER nurse.
And in addition to being an ER nurse, what else have you done during your adult life?
I spent 8 years in the Marines, a combat veteran.
And what did you do while you were in the Marines?
I was a communications technician and also, well, every Marine's a rifleman first.
And you saw combat, correct?
Yes, sir.
And now you're an EMT nurse or
ER nurse,
ER
emergency room nurse.
And where do you work at?
Currently, I work at for Emirates at the Baptist Standalone Hospitals.
Mr. Solis, do you remember on September 21st of 2020 being at a gas station?
Yes, sir.
And was that, what type of gas station was it?
It was a Valero
And where was it located?
on Military Drive by Lackland.
And can you tell the jury how you ended up at that gas station, what you were doing that day?
Was taking my sons to go get haircuts. The barbershop was about a half block down on the right from that gas station, and I was stopping there to get some money out of the ATM.
Do you remember roundabout what time it was?
Around 5 o'clock.
And you were getting some money out so that you could go get a hair, so you can pay for your son's haircuts?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Who all was with you?
It was myself, my wife, my son, my daughter, and my stepson.
What were the ages of your children?
Well, let's see, 2 years ago. So my daughter would have been 4, my son 5, and my stepson was 17.
Can you tell the jury what happened, what you see first whenever you first pull up to the gas station, the Valero?
When we pulled into the gas station, I pulled up to, it was one of the type of gas stations that has the station in the middle with pumps on both sides. And there's a parking area and kind of in front of the station. I was pulling up to the front of the station. And I noticed there was a silver SUV kind of like backed up onto the protection poles by the gas pump. And as I pulled up, I saw a male with a gun in his hand who was wearing a white shirt. He was yelling and he opened up the car door and he was pulling another male out of the vehicle. I didn't know what was going on at the time, so I put my truck in reverse, backed up on the other side of the gas station, and that's when I proceeded to go through the gas station to see what was going on.
And let's just even slow it down a little bit. You said that you saw a silver vehicle backed up on something, correct?
Mhm.
Okay. Was it in a spot where a vehicle would normally be, or was it not where normally vehicles are?
It was at the gas pump, but instead of like trying to back out straight from the gas pump, it was like they backed up onto the pole, like they had the wheels turned or something, backed up onto that little protection pole by the gas pumps.
And you said you saw a Hispanic male with a gun in his hand. And what was he doing with that gun when you first see him?
He had it in his right hand and he was yelling and he was opening the door. And as he opened the door, he was yanking out the other male out of the vehicle and he had the gun on him.
You mentioned at that point you back up into a spot and you begin approaching that situation.
Yes, sir.
Some people may ask, why were you approaching that situation? Like what was going through your mind to approach someone with a gun in their hand?
Yeah, I think my wife tells me the same thing all the time. In the Marines, I mean, we were always trained to run towards danger. And that's just the way I've reacted. It's gotten me in trouble over the years, injuries, helping with car accidents, helping in situations, whatever. If I feel that there's a danger, which I also saw a female and there was a guy with a gun, so I was concerned.
At that point, do you have any idea of what's going on?
I have no idea what's going on at the time.
So let's tell the jury, you say you back up your vehicle and then you get out and you begin approaching the situation like you said, correct?
Yes, sir. I was walking through the store. As I was walking through the store, there were people running past me in the opposite direction yelling, "He has a gun."
What happens next?
I walked out the door on the other side of the gas station. And as I did, I caught sight of the two gentlemen The one with the gun had the other one pinned up against the car, and he using his right hand, he had his gun towards the other gentleman's head. And he was yelling. The female that was there with the other guy was screaming and yelling. I didn't want to go straight at them, so I walked around to the left, and I lost sight of them as I was going past the gas pumps and everything. And that's when I heard a single gunshot go off.
All right, excuse me, I'm sorry, just for one moment, if everyone can give me just 2 minutes.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, sorry about that. You may continue.
Thank you, Judge. So Mr. Solis, and I can't remember, I think the last thing we said was, you said you went around the pumps because you didn't want to go directly at them. And
Right.
then during that time, you don't have vision on what's
Yeah.
going on.
I lost sight of what was going on, and I heard the gunshot. And when I did, my first instinct was to draw my my pistol out. And when I did, I racked it to make sure I had a round in the chamber. Came around, had visual of the male with the gun, and the other male was on the ground. I had my gun pointed towards him, but at the ground. And I told him to drop his gun. He was in the process of holstering it at the time. He took it out and put it on the ground. I told him back away from it. He backed away from it. And then I started to approach.
Did, can I ask you this? The individual that you said you saw, that you asked to put down the gun, was that the same individual who had the gun up to the male's head when you first saw them?
Yes.
You mentioned you approached the situation with your gun out, but not pointed at them. Is there a reason you don't have your gun pointed at them?
I was trained to always keep my finger straight and off the trigger until I'm ready to fire, and never point my gun at anything I don't intend to shoot.
So tell me what happens next. You ask the individual who had the gun, you ask him, what do you ask him next? He's holstering his gun. What do you say at that point?
I told him, put the gun on the ground. He looked at me, he saw me, he took the gun out of the holster, he put it on the ground. Told him to back away from it. He backed up. I approached, I kicked the pistol away from it because I didn't want to touch it. And then I had him back up further. There was a truck right there, had him kind of standing at the back of the truck so that I could check on the individual on the ground.
The individual on the ground, Can you tell us what you see when you look at him?
When I looked at him, he wasn't moving. He had bleeding coming from the left side of his head. Getting a closer look at him, his pupils were already kind of fixed and what we call starred in the medical field, meaning anytime there's a brain injury or anything, that kind of they're not completely round anymore. They have a weird shape to them.
Your Honor, I'm just gonna object to any testimony with respect to outside of the scope of a late witness testimony that's going into an expertise and didn't designate him as an expert.
All right. State the witness can answer as to what he saw, not give any expert testimony.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Solis. So what do you do next?
At that point, the one who had the gun was back far enough away from me. He was still in my view. I knelt down next to the victim on the ground, called 911. Another gentleman came up next to me, and he was helping. I was on the phone with 911. They asked if I was comfortable doing CPR. I said yes, I was. I handed him my phone, and I began doing CPR. I noticed the bleeding. We wanted to try to stop the bleeding, so there were some shirts on the ground, and I had the gentleman hold pressure to the wound while I was doing CPR.
You begin doing CPR on the individual who's on the ground. What happens next?
At that point, like I said, I had my gun down between my legs so that it wouldn't be confused with the other one. I was doing CPR. A female officer arrived on scene first, and I told her that the man who had the gun was behind the truck there. I pointed him out. I told her my gun was between my legs underneath me, and that the pistol that he had shot him with was off to my right. And I continued CPR at that time. A second officer arrived, and he helped me with CPR. I switched up with him. He started doing compressions, and I started holding pressure on the wound. And when I did, I noticed that there was also a wound on the other side of the head, looking like possible exit wound. So started trying to hold pressure there. Another officer showed up, and he brought me a pressure bandage, and we were able to hold pressure like that and continue CPR until EMS arrived.
Did EMS eventually arrive?
Yes.
And at that point?
At that point, I backed away and let them take over.
Mr. Solis, this gas station, you mentioned that it was on Military Drive, correct?
Yes.
Is that location in Bexar County?
Yes.
You mentioned that there was an individual who ends up shot, who you were giving CPR to, and that there's another individual who was the person who you saw with the gun in their hand, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you ever see the individual on the ground ever have the gun?
No, I did not.
Did you ever see him grab at the gun?
I saw when they were kind of pinned up against the vehicle, they were struggling, but I never saw him actually grab the gun.
In your opinion, did it appear that the man who had the gun was trying to hold the individual who ends up getting shot there?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Sustained.
What was the man doing with his hands while he had the gun up against the individual's head when you first saw him?
He was pinning him against the other vehicle.
Can I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Please, I'm gonna show you what's been marked as state's exhibits 2 through 7. If you can you take a look at those and just look at each one and tell me if you recognize what those are photos of?
Yes, sir. This is the sign at the Valero gas station that's on the corner right there.
So let's do this. If you can just quietly go through them and just tell me at the end, I'm gonna ask you, do you recognize all of those?
Yes.
And also just for the jury to know, you're wearing something on your arm, correct?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell the jury why you're wearing something on your arm?
I had a injury to my right shoulder at work. I tore my rotator cuff, my bicep, and I also have a slap tear, the labrum inside my shoulder.
Mr. Solis, I showed you states exhibits 2 through 7. Do you recognize the things in those photos?
Yes, I do.
Are those photos of things that you saw that day at that Valero?
Yes.
Do they truly and accurately depict those things that you saw?
Yes, sir.
And do they appear to be altered or messed with in any way?
Not that I can tell.
State would offer states exhibits 2 through 7 into evidence, pending any objection.
No objections, Your Honor.
All right, states exhibits 2 through 7 are admitted without objection.
Permission to publish, Judge?
Granted.
Your Honor, may I assist?
Yes.
On the screen there in front of you, so the first one I'm going to show you is state exhibit number 2. Can you tell the jury what we're looking at in that photo?
That's the sign at the corner of the gas station.
I'm going to show you states exhibit number 3. Can you tell us the things you're looking at?
Yeah, that's the gas station where I told you that I pulled up. When I pulled up, obviously that Jeep wasn't there. And when I saw what was going on, I backed out and parked on the other side of the gas station.
And I think you mentioned this is, and I'm sure all of us have been to gas stations like this. This is one where there's pumps on both sides and there's the stores kind of in the middle.
Right, right.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as states exhibit number 4.
That's what I saw when I pulled up, which is the SUV backed up onto the blue protection pole there.
And states exhibit 5.
Same thing.
Can you tell me what states exhibit 6 is?
That's the truck that was on the other side of the SUV that I had the individual with the gun stand behind.
And then finally, states exhibit number 7. Can you tell us what that is?
That was the victim that was on the ground.
And is that the individual that you were doing CPR on? And then at this point, it looks like EMS is taken over.
Yes, sir. And the rags by his head were the ones we were using to try to stop the bleeding.
You say that they're yelling when you first walk up. Can you hear what they're yelling, or can you hear the substance of their conversation?
I really couldn't remember what was being yelled.
During that time period that you were there, so this was back in 2020, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you recognize the person who you saw with the gun here in this courtroom today?
Really, I couldn't tell you. It was 2 years ago. I can't remember exactly what he looked like. I can remember the whole situation, what happened, but to actually say, yes, that's him. No, sir, I couldn't.
Did the person who the police had apprehended, whenever the person that the police apprehended that day, was that the person that you saw?
Yes, sir.
After this occurred, did you go back and talk to the police about what you had seen?
Yes, sir.
And did you make a statement, essentially documenting the things that you saw?
Yes, sir. When one of the officers told me to put my pistol away in my truck, which I did. I told my wife everything was okay. And then I went back over, and they placed me in the back of one of the police cars, one of the SUVs. And they asked me if I was willing to go downtown and make a statement with the detective. And I said, yes.
The female that you mentioned during this time, I think you mentioned there's a female involved that's going whenever this incident occurs, correct?
Yes, sir.
Where does she go during this time after everything happened?
The minute I heard the gunshot, she went screaming, running behind the building. I lost sight of her. I don't know where she went.
The state will pass the witness, Your Honor.
All right, defense.
Good afternoon, Mr. Solis. My name is Guillermo Lara. I'm going to ask you a few questions.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Solis, just to kind of run me through it, you indicated that you were driving with your family. Someone brought to your attention that there was an individual with a firearm. Is that right?
I saw him.
You saw the individual with the firearm.
Yes, sir.
So at that point, you pull in to the Valero, correct?
No, I was already pulled into the Valero when I saw him.
Okay, so you're pulled into the Valero and you saw him before you pulled in, or as you were pulling into the Valero?
As I was pulling in, like I said, we pulled into the entrance on the other side, and it came around towards the front. And when I saw what was going on, I put in reverse, backed up, and parked on the other side.
Your Honor, permission to approach the witness.
Yes, sir.
I believe you, yes, apologize. I'm handing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 3 and number 4. Do you recognize those two photographs?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if we're looking at this photograph of where this vehicle is right here, what vehicle is that?
That's the vehicle that the individual with the gun approached, and he was yelling at them. He had his gun drawn already. He opened up the passenger door that you can kind of see there, and he was yanking the other individual out of the vehicle.
Okay, so when you arrived at the scene, in relation to this area, where did you go when you parked?
I was about where the Jeep was coming in. When I saw what was going on, I put my truck in reverse, went back to the other side of the building and parked on the other side.
Okay, So as far in reference to this photograph, so at some point, you get there to this location, reverse it to the other side of the Circle K.
Yes, sir.
So when you arrive at the scene that afternoon, when you arrive at the scene that afternoon, you did not witness the driver of that vehicle attempt to sideswipe Mr.
No, I didn't.
Parada, did you?
I didn't see anything before when I drove up.
Okay, and what you did next was you went in through the other side of the Circle K to get into the store, correct?
Yes, sir.
So how much time do you think passes between you reversing and parking and you entering the store?
Less than a minute.
Okay, so you're in the store. Are there other individuals in the store with you?
As I literally walked into the door and continued to walk all the way through. And as I was walking through, other people were running past me, going towards my truck, yelling, "He has a gun."
Now, at that moment, when you get to that door on State's Exhibit number 3, when you get to this door here,
Yes, sir.
you don't exit immediately, do you?
I think so. I mean, I may have hesitated a little bit, but I did, when I stepped out to where I had view of what was going on, that's when I saw him having, the other individual pinned up against the car.
Okay, so if you're looking out of the door right there, your testimony is that you see that Mr. Parada is holding the individual, Mr. Cepeda, with his left hand or with his right hand?
He was holding him with his left hand. He had the gun in his right hand.
Okay, and are there any pumps in that may block your view from that door?
From the view that I had, once I had view of him when walking out the door, nothing blocked my view until I was walking around the pumps.
Okay,
From the
So-
door itself, I can't remember exactly when I saw him when I was walking out the door.
okay, so when you're looking at the direction of Mr. Cepeda and Mr. Parada, your testimony today was that you witnessed that Mr. Parada had his gun pointed at the direction of Mr. Cepeda. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Now, what angle was, if you might, I guess you can't really do it.
I'll use my left hand,
Okay,
but basically this being his right hand, he had it up like this.
so if he had it up like, you said like this,
Mhm.
okay, so Mr. Parada, Your Honor, may I, okay, so Mr. Parada, would you? So you're at the door of the Valero right here. Fair to say?
Okay, yeah.
How many feet approximately is it to the gas pump or where the silver car is? Do you remember that?
To the silver car
Yes.
from the door, probably 5-6 feet maybe.
Okay. And so you're looking this way. Your testimony is that there wasn't anything obstructing your view. You had a clear view of Mr. Parada and Mr. Cepeda, correct?
Yes.
Now, if Mr. Allen here is Mr. Cepeda, are you viewing it?
I'm
not
viewing
like
it
this or
from-
From an angle.
I'm viewing it from behind your left shoulder.
You're,
So if he was pinned up against that wall saying that that's the car, and I came out the door, I looked to my right a little bit and I'm seeing him over your left shoulder.
my left shoulder. Okay.
Right.
So
I'm looking at your back.
at my back. Okay.
Yes.
So if Mr. Parada, and he's Mr. Cepeda, Mr. Parada is holding onto Mr. Cepeda by this part, or which part is he holding on?
He's kind of had him like this,
Like this on the left side or the,
like just his arm kind of across his chest, pinning him on the car.
okay. And you indicated that was this fair accurate
The gun was pretty much at his head,
at his head?
around there. Yeah,
This close?
pretty much.
Okay. And you're at this moment, when I have the handgun at Mr. Cepeda's head, your testimony is that you're outside by the pump,
I
looking
can,
at me at this angle.
I came out the door, and as I come out the door, I see what's going on there, and I start walking to my left, not to walk directly at the situation, but to get around so that I have a better view and have distance between me and the situation.
Okay, did you happen to take a look at the video surveillance of this?
I have not seen it.
No, okay. What were you wearing that afternoon?
T-shirt, shorts, and a white pair of shoes.
Would it surprise you that if the video surveillance would show you exiting the store there and after Mr. and Mr. Parada and Mr. Cepeda have gone further past the gas pumps?
Would it surprise me if what now?
If you exit that store, that door that's seen right there on State's Exhibit number 3.
Mhm.
And when you exit again
To the left.
to the left.
Mhm.
But that's after they are near that silver vehicle that you described as where he was pinned against.
They weren't by this vehicle.
Correct.
There was another car.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. Is it possible? I know it's been some time since the
It's
incident,
been 2 years. Yeah, it's possible.
and it's possible that some of these details aren't exactly how you recall them now. Is that fair?
Could be, sure.
And do you recall if there was a female in between Mr. Parada and Mr. Cepeda?
In between?
Yes, sir.
No. I remember there was somebody else around the car. It could have been that person's car. The female that was with them, she was kind of off to the side, it seemed like, yelling at them. I don't know if she was trying to break it up or something. I'm not sure. The one thing I do remember, like I said, when I walked out and when I caught sight of them, he had him pinned against the vehicle, had the gun up to his head. They were yelling. The other guy was struggling. I lost sight of them when I was going around to, like I said, to the left. And that's when I heard the gunshot. When I came around the gas pumps and had view of them again, the other gentleman was on the ground already. And obviously the person with the gun was standing a little bit away from him, but looking down and holstering his weapon.
Okay, so you see them, your testimony is that you see Mr. Parada hand on Mr. Cepeda's shirt with the handgun pointed at Mr. Cepeda's head. Is that fairly accurate?
Yep. He had him pinned up against the vehicle.
Okay.
They were
Now,
struggling.
at any moment, I believe your testimony was that you never saw Mr. Cepeda grab the gun. Is that your testimony?
I said they were struggling. I didn't remember seeing him grab the gun.
So it is possible that Mr. Cepeda actually did grab the gun from Mr. Parada. Is that fair to say?
Could have happened in the time that I didn't see.
Is it possible that Miss Sabrina also had a hold of that handgun in between Mr. Parada and Mr. Cepeda?
Judge, I'd object to speculation.
Could you repeat your question, please?
Yes, Your Honor. Did you personally see Miss Sabrina in between Mr. Cepeda and Mr. Parada with her hand on the firearm?
No, I didn't.
Now, do you recall Mr. or another male individual arrive at the scene?
There were a lot of people around.
Let me clear that one up. So right when you exit the Circle K,
Mhm.
is there another male individual that's behind Mr. Parada and directly adjacent to Mr. Cepeda?
Not that I remember.
So do you recall if, and maybe you don't remember, but do you recall if Mr. Parada's brother arrives prior to you arriving there?
No, I wasn't, tell you the truth, I wasn't paying attention to anyone else around other than what I was fixed on, which was the person with the gun. That was my main concern, is so that nobody got hurt.
Did you witness another male while Mr. Parada is struggling with Mr. Cepeda, did you witness another male arrive and get directly behind Mr. Parada prior to the firearm being discharged?
No.
Um, is it possible that that is in fact what took place?
I mean, there's lots of possibilities. I don't know. I'm just telling you, I didn't witness it. I don't remember seeing it.
And what you're testifying to today is based off of the recollection of what you remember from the incident, correct?
Yes, sir.
You indicated that on the day of the incident, you did go down to the station to provide a statement, correct?
Yes, I did.
In that statement, did you give a full and accurate description of everything that you witnessed or observed that afternoon?
Everything that I saw from my point of view, yes.
Um, Did you happen to speak with SAPD officers prior to providing your written statement to law enforcement that afternoon?
Yes, I did.
And do you recall if on September the 21st of 2020, that when speaking with law enforcement, as you were providing CPR, you did not indicate that you witnessed Mr. Parada with his firearm pointed at Mr. Cepeda?
No, I don't remember saying that.
Um,
Because I remember talking to one of the officers who was asking me what happened. And I told him that he did have the pistol like pointed at his head from the side. And then I lost sight of what was going on as I was moving around. And I heard the gunshot. And when I came around and got visual on them again, that the individual was on the ground. The other one was standing above him with the gun, holstering it.
and so you didn't actually see when the firearm was discharged?
No, I
correct?
did not. And that was in my statement as well.
Okay, and in fact, as far as when the firearm was discharged, you don't know what the position was of Mr. Parada's hands in relation to Mr. Cepeda's hands?
No.
In fact, your testimony and your statement, again, is that you lost sight of them at some point, and the next thing you witnessed is an individual being on the ground.
I heard the gunshot and then the individual on the ground. Yes.
Did you notice if the female that was there at the scene, did you notice if she had any firearms in her possession?
No, I didn't. The
Um,
minute, like I said, the minute that the gunshot went off, I saw her screaming and running off behind the building, which in this picture would be where the big truck is in the back. She ran behind it that way.
um, When all this is going on, from the moment you arrive to the moment that you actually make contact with Mr. Parada, is everything happening really quick?
Yes.
And is that something with your military experience, is that something that tends to happen in these types of situations?
Usually, yeah. I mean, when there's a intense situation, a lot of stuff happens at one time.
Now, when so the last few questions. So when you finally make contact with Mr. Parada, you again have your handgun pointed directly at him,
No, it was pointed in his direction at the ground.
in his direction at the ground. And was Mr. Parada compliant?
Yes, he was completely.
Did he attempt to flee at any moment?
No, not at all.
Was he combative with you?
Not at all.
At any moment, did you have an exchange of words other than put your gun down with Mr.
No,
Parada?
sir.
When you arrive, Your Honor, strike that question. I have no further questions for this witness.
State.
Briefly, Judge. Mr. Solis, I do want to clarify at least one thing. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Solis, I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification as State's Exhibit Number A. Is States A, and can you flip through that? Is that a copy of the statement you gave to SAPD on that day?
Yes, sir.
And I believe on cross, the question that Mr. Lotta asked you was, isn't it true on that day that you did not say the gun was pointed at the victim, correct?
That was,
what he said to you. That
yes, sir.
That statement didn't say that. Now that you have State's Exhibit A, can you read through that statement and tell me if you did put that in your statement?
Yes, sir. It's right here.
So the fact that he had the gun pointed at him is in that statement, correct?
Yes, sir.
You've never seen the surveillance from this day, correct?
No, I have not.
Was it a hectic situation?
Yes.
State would ask to publish State's Exhibit Number 1 at this time, Judge.
I'll be granted.
Yeah.
Say it's the board of the.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Solis, we're playing surveillance video from that day. You mentioned that you don't see anything before the part that catches your eye when you drive up, correct?
Right.
We're gonna watch and we're just gonna show the jury what's on the surveillance video, okay? So some of this may be things you didn't see, some of it maybe have been things you did see. I believe in State's Exhibit Number 1, we see a silver vehicle pull up. Do you recognize that silver vehicle?
Yes, sir.
You described the silver vehicle that was up, parked in a place where it wasn't supposed to, or ran up a place where it wasn't supposed to. Is that silver vehicle?
It looks like it.
Mr. Solis, I do see a sheen on the road in State's Exhibit Number 1. Can you tell the jury, was it rain? Was there a reason why it looks like that?
Yeah, it was raining.
Right now at 5:19 PM on the video, we see a silver truck pull up. Do you recognize that silver truck?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell the jury what that silver truck is?
That's the truck that was there when I told him to back up and stand behind the truck.
An individual is getting out of that truck. What color is the shirt on the individual who's getting out of the truck?
White.
Mr. Solis, at this point, the individual who got out of that truck, is he standing behind the silver vehicle that you mentioned?
Yes.
Right now at approximately 5:21:56 PM, did you see that individual knock on the window?
Yes.
Is he now talking to someone in the vehicle, or at least standing where he would be talking?
It appears so. Yes.
At this point, does he have his hands out in front of him?
Objection, Your Honor, leading.
Sustained.
What are his hands doing at this point?
He has them out in front of at least one of them. And
You mentioned that when you pull up, the vehicle's already up on the thing, correct?
yes, sir.
Did you, in watching the surveillance, do you think you're on the scene yet,
Um,
or can you tell?
I can't really tell. It could be because when I pulled up off to the side over here, he was grabbing at the door and yanking it open.
We'll keep playing it. Right now, are we watching, what are we watching? That white, the individual wearing white, the two individuals started walking away. What did he do?
He ran up to them. Looked like he had something in his hand. From
You see
there,
where
it looks
they're
like
at
they're
right now?
struggling right there against the car.
Do you see yourself anywhere in the surveillance
Yes,
right now?
I'm right towards the truck there.
You're right above the top of the cab of the silver truck.
Yes. I had my gun pointed down and I was telling him with my other arm to place the gun on the ground, back up.
I know where it's a little bit off screen, but at this point is the spot where the individual who is shot, is it on the screen or off the screen?
It's a little off the screen there. At this point, I'm calling 911.
Thank you, Mr. Solis. I'll pass the witness.
Defense.
Yes, sir. Mr. Solis, I just want to clarify. The state asked you if on the day that you made your statement, if specifically you identified or provided a statement to law enforcement that Mr. Parada was pointing the gun at his head. Yes or no?
Yes.
And that's specifically stated in that statement that you have there in front of you. You can take a look at it again if you'd like.
Yes, I saw it in there.
Now, that took place the day of the incident, correct?
Yes.
Now, the video that we just saw right now, you would agree with me that by the time that you actually turn around and get around to have his back towards you, they're not close to that silver vehicle. Would you agree with me after seeing the video?
When I came out from the angle that I had by the vehicle, I saw them at the vehicle. Like if you could back it up, I mean.
So, okay, so my question is to you, after watching this video, you would agree with me that when you exit the Valero, when we see you on the screen at the Valero, okay, when we see you come out,
Mhm.
Mr. Parada is already past that silver vehicle. Would you agree with me on that?
I'd have to see it again.
Okay. If you would identify for me when you witnessed yourself come out of that.
I remember the door being open.
So at this point of this video, have you seen yourself exit the Valero? Yes or no?
I haven't seen myself exit, no.
Okay.
There, I believe.
Okay, now,
I
Was
think
that
I was
you
at,
that
I think
was
I was
trying
at the
to-
door.
okay, so at this moment, after watching this video, have you witnessed yourself by those pumps closest to Mr. Parada? Yes or no?
No, not by the pumps.
In fact, we haven't seen you enter the screen. Is that fair to say?
Probably, yeah. I can't tell. It's very clear by the door. I believe I was at the door.
But there was another male that ran towards that direction. Would you agree with that?
Yes, yes. I'm right there. Is that, wait. I believe I'm behind, yeah, that's me right there behind the
So at this-
individual with the vest on. I was behind him at that point.
So after refreshing your memory and watching this video, you would agree with me that you're not directly behind Mr. Parada. Would you agree with me?
Right.
Okay. In fact, you don't actually have a vantage point of Mr. Parada against that silver vehicle, according to this video. Was that fair to
Actually,
say?
you can't see it from this angle because where that door is, as I'm coming out the door looking to the right, you have a clear view at the front of the around the front of the vehicle. That's why when I came out, I did see him up against. Saw them up against the vehicle, and then I saw them disappear.
According to, so what we've seen on the video, you would agree with me that by the time that we see you enter the frame of the video, Mr. Parada and the other individuals are beyond that silver vehicle, correct?
They're going off to the side. Yes.
Um, And you would agree with me that when viewing this video, it helps refresh what actually took place that afternoon. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, I see more of what was going on.
No further questions, Your Honor. We pass the witness.
State.
None from the state either, Your Honor. Is he excused?
All right, is this witness excused or subject for recall?
He's excused, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. The rule has been invoked, sir. What that means is you can't discuss your testimony with anyone. The only persons you're allowed to speak to about your testimony or about this case are attorneys for the state and the defense. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. State, call your next witness.
State calls Charles Cooper.
All right, state, are you going to be using state's exhibit number 1 with this witness?
Yes, Judge, but not at this moment.
All right, could you raise your right hand for me, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, if you can have a seat, make sure you keep your voice up, and if you could state your name for the record.
Charles Cooper.
All right, thank you. State.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Cooper,
Yes.
do you live here in Bear County?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How are you currently employed?
I'm with Ready Ice.
Ready Ice?
Yes.
Okay. What do you do for Ready Ice?
I just deliver to all the convenience stores around town.
How long have you been with Ready Ice?
22 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. You delivered to Valero
Yes.
as one of the stores on your route at 6903 West Military Road.
Yes, sir.
Did you deliver to that Valero back in 2020?
Yes.
Back in 2020, were you a witness to a shooting that occurred there?
Yes, sir.
Were you delivering at that time?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell the jury what you remember seeing?
I just remember seeing that the person approached them in the car and then,
Let's
sorry.
break it down. No, you're good. So you see a person approach. Do you remember what that person was wearing?
I probably couldn't tell you now, sir.
Do you remember if that person was black, white, or Hispanic?
He was Hispanic.
Okay. And then you said he was approaching another car.
Yes, sir.
Do you remember what kind of car that was?
I just know it was a little smaller car. He was in a big black truck yeah,
Okay. He was in a truck.
yes.
And how many people were in the car that he was approaching?
There was 2.
Do you remember the genders of those people?
Yes, the female was driving and the male was in the passenger seat.
And so when the Hispanic male approached that vehicle, what was he doing?
He was tapping on the window. He was talking in Spanish, so I didn't know what he was saying.
Okay. Do you speak Spanish?
No, sir.
Which window was he tapping on?
The passenger side.
Do you know if the passenger rolled down his window?
At the angle I was at, I'm not sure. I don't think so though.
Okay.
Because immediately after that, they tried to back up real quick. So
How close to you were you? Or I guess how close to them were you?
I was probably about maybe at least 10 feet, 10 to 15 feet at the most.
And so you said that they backed up quickly.
Yes.
Was that in the vehicle?
Yes,
So would it have been the female driver backing up?
that's correct.
What happened after they backed up?
Well, she got hung up on the rail of the protectors that go around the pump, and the car was suspended in air, and the wheels were just spinning.
Did you ever see a weapon displayed by anyone?
Just the person approaching the vehicle.
The Hispanic male?
Yes,
Did he have a weapon out prior to them backing up?
yes.
And so he has a weapon out. Where was it pointing? If you remember.
He didn't, I don't think it was pointed at anybody. He just had it in his hand.
Okay. And so after they get hung up, what happens after that?
Well, then they get out of the vehicle and then he approaches the victim and grabs him by the shirt and has the gun to him. And then the female, he tells her to go and she takes off running.
Okay, and so the Hispanic male with the gun approaches the male who was in the vehicle,
Yes,
and you said he grabbed him.
yes.
Could you, I guess, do you know if they were speaking to each other?
He said a few things, but I can't recall him saying anything back, the victim himself. I don't recall him saying anything back. The only thing I heard him say was to tell her to run.
Okay, the male from the vehicle told the female from the vehicle to run.
Yes.
When the male with the gun had the male from the vehicle, when he was holding him, could you see where he had the gun?
Yeah, he was pointing at his head.
Okay. How
And
close?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, sir.
I was just gonna say the victim kept backing up, like he was gonna try to run, but he didn't run.
Okay. And so the male with the gun had it pointed at the victim's head.
Sure.
Did you see when the shot was fired?
No, because I was on the inside of the pump, so they had got to the point where the pump was blocking my view.
Okay.
I heard the gun discharge and I saw the guy fall.
Did you ever see the male, the victim, swing or attack the male with the gun?
No, not at all. Not when he was in my side. I didn't.
Did you see the female attack the male with the gun?
No, she took off running towards the McDonald's.
And so you said you heard a shot fired, but you didn't see it. Is that right?
That's correct.
What was the next thing that you saw?
Right after the shot fired, I saw the victim fall to the other side. He was bleeding out of his head.
What happened after that?
Well, then that's when the off-duty nurse, I guess, he came flying in. And he disarmed the man with the gun, and then he started to try to help save his life by covering up the blood and trying to slow down the bleeding. So
How did you know the male who came in was an off-duty nurse?
I assumed because he had on his full scrubs, so I assumed he was a nurse.
What did you do at that point?
I didn't know what to do. I was kind of relieved that it looked like somebody that had some medical training was there. I just stood there and observed until the police arrived.
Did you know any of the parties that were involved?
No,
Had you ever seen surveillance video from that day?
no.
Your Honor, may I publish State's Exhibit 1 again?
Yes.
And Mr. Kubrick, we've already watched this video with the jury. I just want you to identify yourself in the video. And you said you work for Ready Ice, correct?
Yes. There I am right there.
Okay, that's you pulling up with the pallet and the,
I didn't even realize that he pulled up at the same time as I did. Yes.
and so I'm gonna fast forward through it, just so that we can see, and the jury can see, I guess, where we're at in relation to everything that happened. This is you right here.
Yes.
And are we watching you just loading up the ice into the machine? And sorry, I forgot to ask, this is you in the maroon shirt, correct?
Yes.
It looks like you were still packing ice
Yes, sir.
until this moment. Is that
Well, yeah, but I was kind of watching out of the corner of my eye as well.
okay? And so how far would you say you were from all of this?
Well, I mean, like I said, I'm at the beginning. Oh, see, in the beginning, I was probably like maybe like less than 10 feet, I guess. But then I backed up over in the corner.
So we no longer see you on the camera?
Yes, I'm just right here in the corner, though. I didn't go very far.
And was that you
Yes,
that we see come back into the cameras?
yes.
And so at this point, they're on the other side of the pumps.
Yes.
Do you have an idea about how far that is from where you're at?
I mean, it's a small space. It can't be more than 10 feet, or maybe it's got to be about 10 feet away. And there she goes running. Oh, I guess, oh, I see. I couldn't see him struggling like that.
Okay, so it appears that the victim's struggling.
Yeah.
Objection leading.
Sustained.
We'll pass the witness, Judge.
Defense.
Mr. Cooper,
Yes, sir.
you spoke to law enforcement on that day, is that right? Do you remember who you talked to?
I'm sorry, sir. I don't.
Do you know if it was a male or female officer?
It was a female, yes.
Okay. So you spoke to that female officer. Did you go downtown to give a statement?
No, sir. They told me that they would call me if they need anything.
Okay. Did they ever call you?
No, sir.
When was after that day, when was the next time that you were contacted?
Was two. It was the day before yesterday. They left a note on my door.
Okay, so Monday
Yes,
of this week,
yes, sir.
so almost 2 years later.
Yes, sir.
You would agree with me, your memory of the incident was better on September 21st of 2020 than it is today.
Yes, sir.
And you actually hadn't even reviewed the surveillance footage until right now?
Yes, sir. That's the first time. Yes, sir.
Okay, so originally you said it was a black truck.
Yeah.
A silver truck.
Yes, sir.
Now, when you spoke to law enforcement on September 21st, 2020, you did tell them that the two individuals were engaged in a physical altercation. Is that right?
I don't recall saying that.
Do you remember what you told them?
I pretty much told him the same thing. I told him that he grabbed him by the shirt and then he was trying to back up like he was trying to run away.
So if that officer said that you said that they were in a physical altercation, that would be incorrect.
To the best of my knowledge, I don't recall saying that they were in an altercation.
Did you give a written statement?
No, sir.
Okay, so is it possible, you might have said it, you don't remember?
Yeah, it's possible.
Okay. Now, in the surveillance video, we can see you, when you were packing the ice originally, you would agree your back is turned to the SUV that ends up on the pole.
Correct. Yeah, yes, sir.
And when you testified on direct examination, you said the female just took off, isn't that right?
Well, yeah, well, I mean, he told her to take off. I didn't say how long after, but yeah, she did take off.
But you had said that the female ran, isn't that right?
Correct.
Okay, we can see that she actually comes back and is in the middle of that altercation. Would you agree with me? If you don't remember, yeah, that's fine.
I'm sorry. I don't want to say something wrong. I don't remember.
Fair enough. I'm not trying to, okay. And again, at some point you lose visual of the individual.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Fair to say, obviously, then you don't know what happened during that time.
That's correct.
And you said that the other male who came to help thought they were a nurse because they were wearing scrubs, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So, we talked about how your back is turned to that SUV, right, when you're loading the ice.
Sure.
But you had mentioned, well, I'm kind of paying attention out of the corner of my eye, is that right?
Well, I was kind of like glancing, turning my head a little bit. I could see what was going on the whole time.
When do you notice the gun being pointed at the individual?
At the actual individual?
Yeah,
Well, I mean, I noticed he was, like I said, when he started, he had to grab over his shoulder of his shirt, was pointing at it.
sure, when was that?
Well, I was,
Out of your corner of your eye, or are you looking at it? When was that exactly? You remember?
yeah, well, I had to have been looking at it. Yes, sir.
Okay, you said, but do you remember where they were?
Well, I remember when they started off and they started walking behind on the other side of the pump.
Okay, so they're not by the SUV, they're behind the pump,
Yes.
but not behind the truck, because you can't see them behind the truck, right?
No, I didn't see what happened behind the truck.
And you can't see over the truck, right?
Yes, sir.
I'll pass the witness.
All right, State.
Brief redirect, Judge. Mr. Cooper, just to be clear, between, you said you spoke to officers on that day, correct?
Yes.
And prior to, I guess, a couple of days ago, had you spoken to anyone else from law enforcement or anyone else involved in the case regarding what you observed that day?
No, sir.
All right, we'll pass the witness, Judge.
Defense.
No further question.
All right, is this witness excused or subject for recall?
Excuse, Your Honor.
Yes, Judge, excuse.
All right, the rule has been invoked, sir. What that means is you can't discuss your testimony with anyone. The only persons you're allowed to speak to are attorneys for the state and attorneys for the defense.
Yes,
All
ma'am.
right, you're excused. State, call your next witness.
State calls Officer Patience Markage.
All right, can you raise your right hand for me? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right, please have a seat. Make sure you keep your voice up so that the jurors can hear. Could you state your name for the record?
My name is Officer Markage.
All right, state.
Thank you, Judge. Officer, how are you currently employed?
I'm employed with the city of San Antonio as a police officer.
How long have you been employed with SAPD?
Approximately 5 years.
Are you a certified peace officer?
Yes, sir.
What did you have to, I guess, training or licensing did you have to go through to become a certified peace officer?
I spent approximately 7 months in the academy, doing different training courses and classes in order to get my TCO license.
So you're licensed by the state of Texas?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear
You're
you.
licensed by the state of Texas?
Yes, sir.
And what, I guess, division or area are you stationed at?
The West Police Substation.
Can you tell the jury generally what area of San Antonio that is?
The specific area that I work is 90, Highway 90 and Military to like 410 in Marbach area.
How long have you been assigned to West Substation?
5 years.
And are you a patrol officer?
Yes, sir.
What are your duties as a patrol officer?
I just respond to every 911 call that could come across as just like a shoplifting or a car accident or family disturbances, both civil and criminal calls.
At some point, I guess, back in 2020, did you respond to a Bolero located at 6903 West Military?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember what you were responding to?
It was multiple different calls that came in with multiple disturbances involving firearms and robberies and I think shooting as well.
Okay, and so that address at 6903 West Military, do you remember what type of business that is?
It's a gas station.
And is that within Bear County?
Yes, sir.
And does September 21st of 2020, does that sound like the correct date?
Somewhere around there.
Would you have made a report documenting everything?
Yes, I would have.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
Showing what's been marked as State's Exhibit B, can you take a look at that and tell me if you recognize it?
Yes, sir. This is my report.
Okay. And so if at any time you need to refresh your memory, you can look at your report, just remember to not read directly from it. So what was the date that you were dispatched to that Bolero?
It's going to be September 21st of 2020.
And you said that there were a few different calls. Do you remember what the initial call out was for?
I don't recall the initial call. There's multiple kind of coming at the same time. So I don't remember the very first one.
Okay. By the time that you get dispatched to the Bolero, what were you being dispatched for? And would you have documented it in your report?
From what I can remember, let me see the report. A shooting, there's a gun disturbance and a shooting.
Okay. Did you make that location?
Yes, sir.
When you made it there, what did you observe?
There was many things that I saw when I initially got there. I did see an individual on the ground bleeding and another person performing CPR
Okay.
on the male.
From those two individuals, could you tell where the individual who was on the ground, where he was bleeding from?
I want to say his head or somewhere on the top or part of his body.
Okay. Other than those two individuals, did you observe anyone else?
There was multiple people standing around.
Okay. What about vehicles? Did you make any note of the vehicles at the location?
From my initial contact with those people, I did not observe anything that stuck out until maybe 2 to 5 minutes after the fact. It's when I observed other vehicles that were involved in the incident.
Okay. And so when you arrived at the location, were there any other officers there?
No, sir.
So you were the first on the scene.
Yes, sir.
And so being the first on the scene and seeing an individual on the ground bleeding, I guess, what are you trained to do?
Multiple things. Initially try to preserve the scene, apprehend anybody that needs to be either detained or in handcuffs. Obviously, the safety of citizens around is most important. So making sure that the scene is secure, and then also ensuring the scene is secure. That way, emergency medical services can arrive on scene.
Did you make a determination as to who the shooter was?
With direction from another person on scene.
Okay. Once you, I guess, were made aware of who the shooter was, what did you do?
I placed that individual in handcuffs.
You placed him in handcuffs?
Yes, sir.
Were you able to locate the firearm that was used?
Yes, sir. It was on the ground.
What did you do with that, or did you do anything?
Yes, sir. I took it and put it in my patrol vehicle.
And so once you had the person, the shooter in handcuffs, and you had the weapon in your patrol vehicle, what did you do next?
After that, we had other officers on scene as well. I think that's when I noticed the vehicles that were involved. try to get license plate information for the vehicles. There was one vehicle that had like, I think, a temporary tag on the rear of the vehicle that did not match with the vehicle. Upon running the VIN of the vehicle, it was determined that the vehicle was stolen.
Did you notice a vehicle that appeared to be, I guess, disabled in any way?
The stolen vehicle it looked like it was involved in like an accident.
After getting that information, what did you do next?
I think that's when the detectives arrived on scene. I spoke with the detectives a little bit. I also spoke with a witness. I placed that witness in my patrol vehicle. And then I went to a secondary business north of the location to try to get any video surveillance from there as well.
So that witness that you put in your patrol vehicle, do you remember his name?
I don't.
Okay. Would you have documented it in your report?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you take a moment to refresh your memory? And what was the name of that individual?
Charles Cooper.
And then you said that you went to a secondary location.
Yes, sir.
And why did you go there?
Because somebody, I think it was another officer, maybe a detective, said another individual that was also located inside a stolen vehicle fled northbound from the location towards that general direction.
Were you able to get any information from that location?
I spoke to an employee and got their information. That way the detectives can contact them in regards to getting any surveillance from the location.
What was the gender of the person who fled that?
A female.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
Do you recall what happened to the firearm that you placed in your vehicle?
The CSI took possession of the firearm.
Okay, so you wouldn't have been the one to place it into the property room?
No, sir.
Would you have documented it in your report anywhere?
That I did not place it in the
Yes.
property room.
Yes, my question is, if you're not the person to place an item into the property room, would you normally, or would you document it in your report?
I don't believe it's documented in my report. But usually if anybody takes possession of evidence, it'd be documented in either my report or whoever takes possession of the evidence in their report,
Okay, and that would have been the CSI person.
whoever took possession of the evidence.
Your Honor, we'll pass the witness.
Officer, you wrote a report for this day, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And part of that is so you can refresh your memory and make sure you remember important details.
That's correct.
Did you have body worn camera on that day?
Yes, sir.
And you notated it was muted though?
Let me see. Yes, sir. Not the entire incident, but just certain like times throughout the incident.
Did you review that before you testified here today?
No, sir.
Now, what you put in your written report, you rely on that in part to testify here in court, correct?
That's correct.
And you did speak to a Mr. Charles Cooper.
That's correct.
And Mr. Cooper indicated to you that there was a physical altercation between.
Gonna object to hearsay?
That's fine.
And did you pass on Mr. Cooper's information to the detective in this case?
I believe I passed it on to one of the detectives. I don't remember exactly which detective.
You know who the lead detective was?
I believe it was Detective Ferguson.
And I think you said you get info to give to the detectives to follow up on certain things. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Now you talked about the vehicle and you ran the plate. It was reported stolen.
Not from the plate. No, sir.
Oh,
It was
okay.
from the VIN.
All right, thank you. Do you know who that vehicle is registered to?
I don't recall a name.
And did you look in the vehicle or inventory or search that vehicle at all?
I did see inside the vehicle. I don't remember doing it. I did not do an inventory search of the vehicle.
Okay. Do you remember seeing any pipes or drug paraphernalia?
I don't recall.
Now, when you get there, you're the first officer on scene, right?
That's correct.
And you said there's a lot of things going on.
That's correct.
You're trying to make sure that other individuals are safe, correct?
Yes, sir.
And make sure, maybe witnesses, potential victims or other people aren't leaving the scene, right?
To the best of my ability, yes, sir.
And again, you're not sure what you're getting yourself into, especially with a shooting in progress, right?
That's correct.
So, it could be dangerous.
Yes, sir.
Now, if an officer has to pull their weapon, they will sometimes point it at the individual that they're trying to get their attention or to stop or to put down a weapon. Is that fair to say?
Depending on the circumstances, yes, sir.
Sure, and just because they're pointing it at that person, that doesn't mean that they're gonna fire it, that weapon, correct?
I guess it would just depend on the circumstances.
Have you encountered people who are using drugs or using methamphetamine?
Yes, sir.
Objection, relevance.
That'll be overruled.
Can that sometimes increase the unpredictability or danger of a situation?
Definitely.
Objection calls for speculation.
He's an officer.
Just one moment. Can you repeat your question, please?
Sure. Can that sometimes lead to increased unpredictability or danger in that situation?
All right, state's objection will be sustained.
Based on your training and experience, can that lead to increased unpredictability and danger to a situation?
Objection, speculation.
That'll be overruled.
You can answer.
Yes, sir.
Now, when you pull up to the scene, the individual that you're directed to that fired the weapon, he's still there on scene, correct?
Yes, sir.
And is it fair to say he's just standing there?
Yes, he was just standing there.
Okay. And the weapon was on the ground, right?
That's correct.
And as an officer, you would appreciate that because it's not in somebody's hand. It's more predictable.
That's correct.
And the individual that you made contact with that was the shooter in this case, did they comply with your orders?
Yes, sir.
Do you know if there is any audio of what Mr. Cooper said that day?
If I spoke to Mr. Cooper, my
Can I
body
object
cam
to
would
hearsay?
would have been.
That'll be overruled.
Oh, it was hearsay.
All right, that'll be overruled.
Go ahead.
If I spoke to Mr. Cooper and interviewed him, my body cam would have been running. So it should have been on my body cam.
Okay, they say it should have been on. You didn't review your body cam, so you don't know for sure whether it was recorded or not. Is that fair?
It was recorded. I had my body cam on. It was recorded. I did not review it.
And you would agree with me that that recording would be the most accurate information of what Mr. Cooper said that day?
Yes, sir.
Pass the witness.
State,
One question, Judge. Officer Markage, what was the case number assigned to this offense?
It'll be SAPD 2017 96 92
Um,
98 92.
Okay, 2017, 98, 92.
Yes, sir.
We'll pass the witness, Judge.
No further question.
all right, this witness excused or subject for recall.
Excuse, Your Honor.
All right. The rule has been invoked. What that means is you can't discuss your testimony with anyone. The only persons you're allowed to speak to are attorneys for the state and the defense. Do you understand? All right, thank you. Your excuse. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a short break. And so we're going to come back at 4:15. That'll give, yes. So that'll give Deputy Laura a time to give you instructions, but you've heard some testimony in this case. You're not allowed to discuss or deliberate amongst yourselves anything that you've heard. I'll let you know when it's time to deliberate. You're not allowed to view anything or do any type of research. All of the evidence that you will need to decide this case or reach a verdict in this case will come from inside this courtroom. Does everyone understand? All right, everyone, please rise for the jurors. Everyone, please be seated. And if you need to be closer to the witness. Okay, all right, thank you.
Judge, briefly, just for planning purposes, Judge, we just have one more witness.
I'll cool these gloves for me. Guess I need them.
Yeah, and then I have.
Oh, really?
Have some extra ones too.
When you buy for the night. when I break for you, then
Okay.
I'll do this.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Right on.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, then if you can
I'll restart, yeah. Oh, no. Okay, thanks.
I didn't check it just in case you. I'm saying that's one of the three.
Thanks for signing, baby.
Not signing, Judge. I'll be accused of recording it, Judge,
Okay.
signature.
Thank you for taking it. All right, Deputy Laura, we're ready. Yes, thank you. We're good.
All right, for the jury.
I see you all found me clothes. You're more than welcome to take those. Oh, please be seated. We're standing for you all. Yes. Everyone, please be seated. State, call your next witness.
Yes, Judge, the state would call Ryan Rodriguez to the stand.
All right, could you raise your right hand for me? Do you solemnly swear affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
All right, thank you. Just make sure you keep your voice up, and if you could state your name for the record.
My name is Ryan Rodriguez.
State.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Rodriguez, can you tell the jury what you do?
Yes, I'm a crime scene investigator with the San Antonio Police Department.
And can you tell us your background, how you became that?
Yes, so I went to school, my undergrad at Texas A&M University San Antonio with a degree in criminology. And then I went to get my master's degree in an unrelated field, school psychology from Trinity. And I worked a little bit for the municipal courts as a juvenile court case manager. And then I got a job with crime scene unit for the San Antonio Police Department around 2018.
And so how long have you been in your current position with SAPD?
4 years.
And is there training that and certifications or anything that goes to becoming what you are?
Yes. So once you get hired, you do about 400 hours of training, and it's mostly in a classroom setting, mock crime scenes, fake scenes like that, and more classroom stuff. And then you take a test, you pass the test, and then you ride with a more senior crime scene investigator for about a month or so, depending on how you're doing. And then after that, you're essentially on your own.
So Mr. Rodriguez, can I call your attention to, were you assigned as a crime scene investigator to a case back in September of 2020?
Yes, sir.
Do you recall the address that you responded to?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Do you make a report that would have that notated on it?
Yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Angie, what's been marked for identification as State's Exhibit C, is that a copy of the report from that day?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
And using that report to refresh your memory, do you have the address where you responded that day?
Yes, it's 6903 West Military.
As a crime scene investigator on September 21st of 2020, in your response to the scene that your report documents, what were the things that you did on that particular day?
So we responded as a team on that particular day. When I got there was someone already taking the photographs. Another crime scene investigator was doing this crime scene sketch, and my task that day was to identify items of evidence and collect the evidence for documentation.
And did you take some items into evidence that day?
Yes, sir.
And can you explain to the jury what that means? Like, what does it mean as a crime scene investigator to take items into evidence?
So when we collect items of evidence, we collect them, process them for documentation purposes. Well, that could be photographing them. It could be, doing a latent print search on a burglary vehicle. But this instance, we collected items that day of evidence, and we took them back to the ICE office where we work and photographed them and documented them for the eventual possibility of them being introduced into court.
Do you number the items that you, the pieces of evidence that you collect?
Yes, sir.
Can you give the jury an overview of the pieces of evidence that were collected on that particular day by you?
Yes. So there were some clothes on scene, a firearm. I took some DNA swabs of the firearm. Some firearm magazines. Like I took some articles of clothing from the gentleman, the suspect over there, and 2 swabs collected from the suspect.
And you said that gentleman over there, do you see the person here in the courtroom who was the suspect on that particular day?
Yes.
Can you point at him and identify him by an article of clothing that he's wearing today for the jury?
If I had photos of him that day, I could just by seeing him.
Okay.
I don't know.
Did you take photos that particular day of him?
Yes.
May I approach the witness?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez, I'm gonna hand you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 8. You recognize that photo?
Yes, sir.
Is that a photo you took on the day that you responded to that scene?
Yes, sir.
Does it fairly and accurately depict the things that are in that photo?
Yes, sir.
And does it appear to be altered or amended in any way?
No, sir.
State would offer State's Exhibit number 8 into evidence pending any objection from the defense.
No objections, Your Honor.
All right, State's Exhibit number 8 is admitted.
Permission to publish, Judge?
Granted.
Showing the jury what has just been admitted, State's Exhibit number 8. Is that a picture of the suspect from that day?
Yes, sir.
Did y'all identify the suspect on that day? I'm sorry, if you need to use your report to refresh your memory, was the suspect identified at the time you took photographs of him?
Yes.
And what was his identity?
Jose David Parada.
Mr. Rodriguez, I asked you to bring a couple of items of evidence today to court, correct?
Yes, sir.
And did you bring those items of evidence with you?
I did.
Do you have them up there with you?
Yes.
I approach, Your Honor.
Yes.
Can you tell us what items of evidence you were asked to bring today?
Yes, you told me to bring a firearm and some magazines.
And can you tell me where you received the firearm and how it was related to this particular case on the date in question?
Yeah, officers had the firearm in custody upon my arrival.
Do you remember the officer who had it?
Markage.
Is that
S-
patient's Markage?
SAPD officer Markage, patient, yes, patient's Markage.
Did you identify the type of gun it was?
Yes,
And would you report, would you be able to tell us what type of gun that was?
yes,
Can you tell us?
yes. It was a 6-hour P39 pistol, so a 40.
And when you look, whenever you bring evidence here, is there a description of the item that each package contains?
Yes,
And have you viewed these items that you brought, and does it contain a description that are the things you collected from this particular scene?
yes,
Can you bring those items up right now?
yes. So I'll do E2, which is the firearm.
And I'm gonna mark it for court purposes as State's Exhibit number 9. And if you want to get the other one, just so I can mark it right now.
E3, which is the magazines.
Back up here.
Okay.
9 and 10. So first, when we talk about State's Exhibit number 9, what is contained in that package?
Number 9 is going to be the firearms, the firearm.
And is there unique markings that you make on the outside of the package that let you know what's inside the package?
Yes, I marked the package with my name, my initials, badge, and the date.
You also place the SAPD case number on the package.
Yes,
And what is the SAPD case number on that package?
20179892.
I'm gonna ask you to take it out, but not show the jury as of right now, but can you take what was in the package out?
Yes,
Is that the firearm that was collected at the scene back in September of 2020?
yes, sir.
State would offer State's Exhibit number 8 into evidence.
That's 9.
I'm sorry, number 9 into evidence.
No objections, Judge.
All right, State's Exhibit number 9 is admitted.
Mr. Rodriguez, just for just for the jury, previous to you taking the stand, the bailiff came and inspected State's Exhibit number 9, correct?
Yes,
And made sure that it was taken where it wouldn't be able to fire.
yes, it's made safe.
So can we just have him hold up State's Exhibit number 9?
Yes.
If you can show the juries what State's Exhibit number 9 is. That's the firearm that was recovered at the scene, correct?
Yes, sir.
I also asked you to bring another package today, correct?
Yes,
And can you tell me what is contained in that second package?
yes, sir. It was 2 magazines with live rounds.
And that's what's contained in State's Exhibit 10, right? What we've marked as State's Exhibit 10?
Yes, sir.
And is the unique case number belonging to this case marked on that package as well?
Yes,
Can you cut into that package and show us
Sure.
what's inside State's Exhibit 10? Or don't show us yet, I'm sorry. Just take a look at what's inside State's Exhibit 10.
yes. I guess I have some scissors. Thanks. You know, open the individual packages too. I packaged them separately inside one package.
Then you know what we can do is we'll mark those as State's Exhibit. And mark the smaller packages as 10A and 10B.
Okay.
And in looking at what's in those 2 smaller packages marked for identification as 10A and 10B, do they also have your initials on those packages?
No, not these ones.
Are they coming out of the bigger package that matches up the case number, correct?
Yes, sir.
Can you cut into those packages and tell us what's inside?
Yes. So I'll show them.
Not yet. but
Okay,
just when
sorry.
You take a look, you
Yeah.
recognize that they're what was described on the label.
Yes, let me open the second one. Yes, sir.
At this time, state would offer State's Exhibits 10 as well as the contents 10A and 10B into evidence.
No objections, Your Honor.
All right, stakes exhibits 10, 10A, and 10B are admitted.
Mr. Rodriguez, can you take out those magazines that you just mentioned and show the jury what was in 10A and 10B?
Yeah, they're all downloaded and loose, but here's the magazines. And the live rounds are in here. I'm going to kind of go around and show them the envelopes with the live rounds in them, or take them out.
If you want to stand up right there in front of the jury, you can just show them.
Yeah, no problem.
I'll come to that side. And Officer Rodriguez, if I could ask you also, to show them state's exhibit number 9. Obviously, it's been made safe, but be careful with
You want to go
which
around
way
and
you
show?
point it. But the state's exhibit number 9, the gun.
Yeah, I'm gonna go around and show them closer.
Yes, please. You guys can see that. Officer Rodriguez, in your documentation of the evidence, did you notate what type of gun that is that we
Yeah,
saw?
yes, sir.
And what is it?
This is a Sig Sauer P239 pistol. It's the make and model.
And what caliber is it?
It's a 40.
And the magazines that you showed in 10A and 10B, what caliber are those rounds?
40s, sir. Just to verify. Yeah, 40s.
Do you document the serial number of the gun whenever you take something into evidence?
Yes, sir.
For the record, can you tell us what the serial number was on this particular gun?
Yes. It's a SBU 020345.
Was there anything else that I asked you to bring to court today?
Just these 2 items, sir.
May I publish state's exhibit number 8 again, Judge?
Yes.
I'm showing you state's exhibit 8 that you had identified as the image you took of Jose Parada on the date in question, correct?
Yes, sir.
In addition to taking photos, did you observe any visible injuries on that day to Jose Parada?
Not that I can recall.
Did you notate that in your report, whether you observed any visible injuries?
Can I look real quick?
Yes, please.
Yes, I put that I did not observe any visible injuries.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Defense.
Yes, sir. Officer,
I'm not an officer. I'm an investigator.
oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I should have said something earlier.
No, you're okay. So you arrived at the scene there at the circle pit, right?
Yes.
And when you arrived, you were given directions from the detective, or who was on the scene that gave you directions on what they wanted photographed?
Typically it'll be a detective. On this particular one, I don't remember who told me to do that. But when I got there, I communicated with my team rather than someone else above me.
Okay, and in this case, did you inventory the contents of the vehicle that was, for lack of a better word, crashed against the gas pump?
I don't recall inventorying a vehicle.
Did you take photographs of anything that was within that vehicle?
No, sir.
Who would have done that if anyone on your team?
I believe when I got there, there was another UEDI, as we call him, a detective photographing the scene prior to me getting there. So he was tasked with just doing the photos because he was already doing them.
Now, you indicated that you noted on your report that you did not identify or locate any visible injuries on Mr. Parada. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
Did you photograph Mr. Parada for purposes of documenting what you may have perceived that day?
The way I document, we have a kind of a standard way we photograph people, and it's just to document him as a person, just to put a face to the pictures and to the scene. Just to identify who he is.
Okay, so your role isn't to take photographs, let's say, for example, his arms, to see if there are any potential marks on his arms.
Usually we do take photos of that. I'm not sure if I did that day, but if we have the photos.
Would you agree with that would be the better representation of whether or not he did have any potential injuries on his arms, left or right arm?
Yes.
You indicated, again, you don't recall whether or not you did that on the day that you took these photographs.
I just don't remember observing any injuries to him.
So if there were any items within that vehicle that were going to be collected for evidence, that wouldn't have been you that evening or that afternoon?
I was not tasked with that on this particular case.
No further questions, Your Honor. We pass the witness.
All right, state,
Nothing further from the state. May he be excused.
is this witness excused or subject to recall?
Excuse, Judge.
All right, thank you. The rule has been invoked. What that means is you can't discuss your testimony with anyone. The only persons you're allowed to speak to are attorneys for the state and attorneys for the defense. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. You can step down.
Thanks. What do I do with all this stuff? I do have they gave me a green release form. Okay. Well, let's leave this stuff here with you.
If you approach. Okay.
Just a moment. Just a moment. Need something with this witness?
Well, no, I was gonna, if you could stay there while we.
Ah, okay. Just one moment then. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna take our break. Normally, what I try to do is have you out of here by 4:30. That way you can avoid the rush hour traffic. So we're leaving a little bit later today than anticipated. We're gonna start tomorrow. I'm gonna need you all here by 10:30. When you come to court, you're not gonna come to this courtroom. Deputy Laura will show you where you'll need to be. Now, because you're arriving at 10:30, the parking garage may be filled. So if you want to be as short of a space, you're probably going to have to come earlier. The reason why we're going to start at 10:30 is because I have another docket in the morning. So even though we're doing this trial, I still have other cases that are happening. Does everyone understand? All right, so remember my instructions. You're not to investigate or read anything about this case. I don't expect the media to be involved in this case, but if they are, and you see something on television or somebody wants to talk to you about it, you need to tell them no. When you're in the courthouse, you need to make sure that you wear your badges and they're displayed, because sometimes you have attorneys talking about different things. And if you have your badges displayed, people will know that you're jurors and they won't speak around you. The other thing that was not covered in voir dire The state's attorneys and the defense attorneys, they're not allowed to speak to you. The only time they were allowed to speak to you was during voir dire. So if you see them in the hallway and they don't say hello to you, it's not because that they're mean people. It's just that they're not allowed to. Does everyone understand? All right. So no deliberating with each other amongst yourselves, no research. Everything that you need in order to decide this case will happen in this courtroom. All right, everyone.